Kursk, July 1943. It was supposed to have been the battle that changed Germany's fortunes on the Eastern Front, and it developed into the biggest tank melee in history. Both sides threw everything bar the kitchen sink at each other in a titanic struggle, but it was the Red Army that eventually prevailed, Germany failing to regain the initiative in the east. In the great panorama of the Battle of Kursk, some actions stand out. The story of how a German Tiger tank took on 50 Soviet T-34s and won is perhaps one of the hardest to believe, but incredibly it did happen. And even more incredibly, the action began not with tanks going head-to-head, but as a case of mistaken identity and some well-placed hand grenades. On the 5th of July 1943, Franz Staudager was a 22-year-old sergeant in the elite 1st SS Panzer Division. He commanded a Tiger I of 2nd Platoon, 13th Panzer Company, 1st SS Panzer Regiment. It was the end of the 5th of July and the first day's heavy fighting at Kursk. Staudager's Tiger was moving to close up with his unit. It was dark when Staudager suddenly saw the indistinct outline of another tank ahead, blocking the road. A figure was standing in the turret, smoking a cigarette. Snatching up his personal weapon and some grenades, Staudager clambered down from the Tiger to speak to what he assumed to be another German tank commander. But the tank was a Soviet T-34, standing with its hatches open. Staudager pulled a grenade from his belt, extracted the pin and tossed it through the nearest open hatch before taking cover. The T-34 exploded, revealing another right behind it. Staudager pulled another grenade out, tore out the pin and ran to the T-34 just as crewmen opened the hatches to see what was going on. The second Russian tank blew up. Then Staudager ran back to his Tiger and boarded her. For destroying 2 enemy tanks in close combat, Staudager was awarded the Iron Cross First Class. But just 3 days later, the Soviet 10th Tank Corps launched a massive attack against the flank of the 1st SS Panzer Division. What Staudager didn't know was that a force of at least 50 T-34s was headed his way. Staudager's Tiger had suffered damage to its tracks and running gear, and along with another damaged Tiger was further east than the rest of the regiment's armour. As the Soviets approached, mechanics managed to get Staudager's Tiger operational, but instead of withdrawing, the sergeant decided to try and stop the Soviet thrust. He drove out of town towards where German Panzer Grenadiers were being overwhelmed by Soviet armour. Within minutes, Staudager's Tiger had destroyed 3 T-34s. Suddenly, 2 more T-34s reared over an embankment and engaged the Tiger. The Tiger got them both. More and more T-34s started to come over the embankment, and Staudager's Tiger destroyed them all, one by one, the T-34 shells bouncing harmlessly off the Tiger's thick frontal armour. Throughout the battle, Staudager constantly manoeuvred his Tiger from position to position as he engaged the Soviet tanks. A staggering number of 76mm shells struck the German tank. The Tiger killed an astonishing 17 Soviet tanks. But Staudager faced a new problem. He had run out of armour-piercing shells, and the Soviet tanks kept coming. Thinking fast, Staudager ordered his gunner to use high-explosive shells instead. The big HE shells did enough damage to render 5 more T-34s inoperable. But now, after taking 67 hits from Soviet shells and fearful of losing a track, Staudager decided to withdraw. Just one Tiger had managed to knock out 22 Soviet tanks, effectively blunting the Red Army's advance in this sector. Sergeant Staudager received the Knight's Cross for this action, the first ever awarded to a Tiger tank crewman. He later fought under Michael Wittmann in Normandy and survived the war, dying in Frankfurt in 1995. If you've enjoyed this amazing story, please do